Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone." David walked toward the entrance of Boston's most upscale restaurant. By his side was Liam, his 9-year-old son with messy brown hair, big headphones, and a Rubik's Cube spinning non-stop between his fingers. Liam didn't talk much to strangers. Actually, he hardly spoke at all, but when he did, it was direct, precise, and almost always surprising. David sighed. "Remember the plan, son? You just need to stick around. If you don't like her, we get up and leave." Liam gave a small nod without taking his eyes off the cube. "If she lies, I'll notice," he said calmly. David almost smiled. That was true. Liam had an incredible skill for spotting patterns in language, behavior, and logic. Since he was diagnosed with autism at age 3, therapists called him hyperlogical. In other words, not great for blind dates. They crossed the elegant dining room and were shown to a reserved table at the back. David looked around with an almost automatic boredom. He had been on 7 dates in the last 2 months, all arranged by his sister, worried about his lonely life. None of the women lasted 5 minutes with Liam without exchanging looks of pity or panic. Some didn't even try to hide it. 8 minutes, Liam muttered, spinning the cube. "What?" David raised an eyebrow. That's how long they lasted on average before lying, pretending, or wanting to leave. David let out a small chuckle through his nose. Maybe they'll break the record today. But before he could finish the sentence, the restaurant door burst open abruptly. Emma appeared amid the fancy setting, like a tornado in a porcelain garden. She carried a bag too big for the occasion, wore a yellow short-sleeve shirt with pineapple prints, definitely casual, and her hair was tied in a messy bun held with a pencil. "Oops, sorry," she said, stumbling on her shoelace and dropping the menu from the next table. The waiter tried to help, but she smiled, picked up the papers, and said loudly, "Relax. Champ, it's not the first time I cause a scene, and it won't be the last." Some guests frowned. Others tried to pretend they didn't see. David just stared, frozen. But Liam stopped spinning the Rubik's Cube. Emma walked up to their table like she hadn't just knocked over half the restaurant. When she got there, she looked at Liam first. She smiled, crouched to his level, and said, "Hi. You must be the judge tonight, right? You look like you're the boss more than you seem." Liam stared at her for 3 seconds. "What is the value of pi squared?" he asked. David choked on his water. Emma blinked. "That depends. Do you want the exact answer or an approximation? Because if it's an approximation, I'd guess 9.869. But if you want all the digits, give me about 20 minutes and a calculator." Liam smiled. David was speechless. Emma straightened up and looked at David as if nothing had happened. "You must be David. Sorry I'm late. Half the subway stopped because of a brave pigeon. And yes, I took the subway because my car is called My Feet, and they're still on installments." David blinked. "You're different. I've heard that before, but I promise I don't bite unless the bread roll is really good." She grabbed one from the basket and bit into it without ceremony. Liam was spinning the cube faster now. His eyes, once behind an invisible wall, were fixed on her. "You're honest," he said plainly. "I am. But if you tell me a secret, I promise to keep it and pretend I never heard it." Liam leaned in and whispered something in her ear. Emma's eyes widened. Then she smiled. "I loved that secret. It's the best one I've been told today." David tried to understand what was happening. He was used to controlling everything, from stock trades to business mergers, but now felt off balance. Like he was inside one of those romantic movies his sister insisted on watching on Friday nights, except in this case, the script was impossible to predict. "Can I order fries?" Emma asked, still holding the menu closed. David hesitated. "That's not exactly on the menu." "Perfect. I love to challenge menus." She winked. David leaned back in his chair. Liam stopped spinning the cube. Emma chatted with the waiter like she'd known him for years. She joked about the complicated names of the dishes and asked if she could take a look at the kitchen later. When the waiter said no, she replied, "Okay, fine, but only because I'm wearing heels today." Liam laughed. A light, short, but genuine laugh. David slowly turned to his son, surprised. "You laughed?" Liam nodded. "She's not afraid of me, and she doesn't feel sorry. She just talks." David looked at Emma. She was now trying to balance a spoon on the tip of her nose. It wasn't what he expected. It wasn't what he wanted, but, strangely, it was exactly what he needed. Dinner went in a way David never imagined possible. Emma didn't ask about his company, didn't mention his fortune, and for the love of everything sacred, didn't say anything like, "It must be hard raising a child alone." Instead, she ate with appetite, joked about the restaurant's overly golden decor, and treated David like he was a normal person. "Seriously, who decided 15 different forks was a good idea?" she said, holding up one of the smaller utensils. "Like, what happens if I use the salad fork to eat dessert? Does the utensil police come after me?" David tried to keep his composure, but the corners of his mouth kept turning up. "Technically, it's a matter of social etiquette." "Oh, I get it." Emma took the dessert fork and cut a piece of salad. "There, now I'm a culinary rebel." "Liam, you're my witness." Liam watched everything with an intensity David recognized. It was the same look the boy had when solving a particularly difficult Rubik's Cube, focused, analytical, but interested. "Emma," Liam said suddenly, stopping her from playing with the forks, "why does electricity make noise when it goes through wires?" David almost choked. Liam never asked casual questions to strangers. Actually, Liam almost never asked questions to anyone except him. Emma showed no surprise, or that forced smile most adults give when kids ask something cute. Instead, she rested her chin on her hand and thought about the question seriously. "Well, technically, electricity itself doesn't make noise. What you hear is the air around the wires heating up and expanding quickly. It's like when you pop popcorn in the microwave. The heat makes the kernels jump and make noise." Liam tilted his head. "But what about when wires make that buzzing sound?" "Oh, that one's different." Emma got excited, waving the dessert fork. "That happens because alternating current makes the wires vibrate 50 or 60 times per second. It's like a really, really boring electric guitar." David stared at her, fascinated not just because the answer was correct, he knew that, but because of how she explained it. No condescension, no oversimplifying, but also no jargon Liam wouldn't understand. "Did you study engineering?" David asked. Emma shrugged as if it wasn't a big deal. "I studied a little bit of everything. I'm the kind of person who reads microwave manuals for fun." She turned to Liam again. "Want to hear something cool? If you put a Rubik's Cube near a speaker playing music, the sound vibrations can slightly affect how the pieces move. Like a dancing Rubik's Cube." Liam's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Totally. Of course, you need very, very sharp ears to notice the difference. But it happens." Liam took the cube out of his pocket immediately and started spinning it near his ear, paying close attention to the almost unnoticeable sounds the pieces made as they moved. David watched the scene with something like amazement. His ex-wife, Laura, had been wonderful with Liam, but even she needed time to get used to the boy's quirks. Most people felt uncomfortable with Liam's direct questions or tried to answer vaguely to not confuse the child. Emma, on the other hand, seemed genuinely interested, like talking to a 9-year-old about physics was the most natural thing in the world. "Liam," David said gently, "finish eating before your food gets cold." "He's fine." Emma interrupted. "Let him explore. Food heats up again. But curiosity, that's rare." And that was the moment David noticed something that made him deeply uneasy. Emma wasn't trying to impress him through Liam. She was genuinely talking to the boy. The difference was subtle. But for someone who had spent the last 2 years being bombarded by women pretending to be interested in his son to impress the father, the difference was striking. Dinner continued at this pace. Emma told hilarious stories about previous jobs, from being a clerk at a hardware store where she had to explain to a customer that screws don't have gender, to working at a diner where the owner insisted she memorized 50 different burger sauces, and the guy was all like, No, it's not special. Sauce number 7. It's special sauce number 7. Emma imitated in a deep, dramatic voice. Like the fate of humanity depended on me memorizing the difference between honey mustard and artisan honey mustard. Liam laughed again. David noticed the sound was becoming less rare, less hesitant. When dessert arrived, an overly fancy tiramisu that probably cost more than Emma made in a day, she looked at it with skepticism. "This looks more like a sculpture than food. I'm afraid to touch it and break something important." "You can eat it," David assured her. "It's just tiramisu. Just tiramisu," he says. Emma shook her head toward Liam. Your dad's a bit out of touch with reality, isn't he? Liam thought about it seriously, sometimes, but he tries. David didn't know if he should be offended or touched by their brutal honesty. Emma took a big spoonful of dessert and made an exaggerated, dramatic face. Okay, I admit it. This is officially the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. She leaned toward Liam, as if to share a secret. But don't tell my corner bakery bread roll. He gets jealous. When it was finally time to leave, David expected the usual ritual, exchanging numbers, the we should see each other again suggestion, the hopeful smile that meant she was waiting for him to make the first move. Instead, Emma stood up, adjusted her bag on her shoulder, and said, "Well, it was nice meeting you both. Liam, keep being curious." David, she hesitated for a moment like she was going to say something important, then smiled. "Thanks for dinner. It was way better than I expected, considering I wasn't expecting much at all." And she left. David stood still, watching her walk toward the door with the same messy energy she had when she arrived. She stopped to thank the waiter, joked with the doorman, and disappeared into the busy Boston street. Something strange happened in David's chest, a feeling he hadn't felt in so long he almost forgot how to recognize it. Genuine curiosity. Not the kind of curiosity he felt about financial reports or market strategies. It was something more human. "Liam," David said, still spinning the Rubik's Cube. "Yes? She didn't try to impress you." David turned to look at his son. "What do you mean?" Liam looked at him with those eyes that saw patterns where others saw only chaos. "All the others always did things to make you think they were important. Asked about money or said I was special in a weird way or tried to seem smarter than they really were." He stopped spinning the cube. "She just listened and talked like we were normal." On the way home, in the quiet of the luxury car that kept them separate from the outside world, David couldn't get Emma out of his mind. There was something about her that challenged all his expectations. She didn't fit into any category he knew, not as fancy as the women in his social circle, but also not as easily impressed as he had imagined. She was smart without being pretentious, funny without trying too hard, honest without being harsh, and for the first time in a long time, David, a man who controlled business empires and moved millions with a phone call, found himself completely out of control. That night, lying in the king-size bed of his apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, David stayed awake, not because of work stress or money worries, but because of a woman who used the wrong fork and made his son laugh, and that bothered him in the best way possible. David wasn't the kind of man who showed up at cafes on Saturday mornings. Actually, David didn't even know where cafes were. His morning routine was coffee made by the housekeeper, the Wall Street Journal perfectly folded, and an agenda his secretary organized with military precision. But there he was, standing in front of Beans and Dreams, a small, cozy cafe in Boston's North End, hands in his pockets, with an expression swinging between determination and total panic. Liam was with Aunt Rachel for a special Rubik's Cube session with other kids on the autism spectrum, something David usually supervised personally. But that morning, he lied, said he had an urgent meeting, and left his son in his sister's care. The truth? He had spent 3 days thinking about Emma, and that was unacceptable. David opened the cafe door, making an old-fashioned bell ring. The place was the complete opposite of anywhere he usually went. Exposed brick walls, a mix of mismatched chairs, local artists' paintings hung with little order, and a coffee smell that seemed to have a personality of its own. And there she was. Emma wore a green apron over a t-shirt that said, "Caffeine, because sleeping is for the weak," and had her hair tied in a ponytail that defied any kind of structural logic. She was behind the counter, patiently explaining to an elderly lady the difference between a cappuccino and a macchiato, using gestures that looked more like a wild dance routine. "And a macchiato is like a cappuccino that went to the gym and got stronger," she said, playfully flexing her arms. The lady laughed and chose the cappuccino. That's when Emma looked toward the door and saw David. For a fraction of a second, her eyes widened with genuine surprise. Then, as if you could see the gears turning in her mind, her expression changed to something between amusement and teasing. She finished helping the lady, handed over the coffee with a warm smile, and then turned to David with a completely neutral look. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if she had never seen him before. David blinked. "Emma, it's me," David, from dinner on Thursday. She pretended to think, tapping her fingers on the counter. David. I don't remember. Are you a regular customer? Because I swear I'd remember someone who looks like he stepped right out of a business magazine. He stood there, unsure if she was serious or not. Emma kept up a straight face for exactly 5 seconds before bursting out laughing. Relax, mister. Serious. I'm just kidding. She leaned on the counter with a mischievous smile. But, speaking of which, what are you doing here? Want some coffee? Or are you just here to ruin my shift? David felt something he rarely experienced. He was being teased. And strangely, he liked it. I wanted coffee, he lied shamelessly. Liar, Emma said, without missing a beat. You look like the kind of guy who drinks coffee that costs more than my week's salary and comes in cups that need instruction manuals. She gestured to the handwritten menu on the board behind her. Here, we have strong coffee, stronger coffee, and coffee that will make you see the future. Which one will it be? David looked at the menu and realized he really had no idea how to order coffee in a normal place. What do you recommend? Depends. Do you know how to order food by yourself, or do you need to call your secretary? The tease hit the mark. David felt his cheeks warm a little. I can order food by myself. Thank you. Prove it. Emma crossed her arms, clearly enjoying herself. Order something from the menu without using words like, I would like. Would it be possible? Or, if it's not too much trouble. David looked at her. It had been years since anyone challenged him like that, years since anyone treated David like anyone else, someone who could be teased, tested, played with. Strong coffee, he said, trying to sound casual. And that thing there, he pointed to a blueberry muffin in the display case. That thing? Emma pretended to be shocked. Sir, that's an artisanal blueberry muffin with crystal sugar topping and vanilla essence. It has a first and last name. Okay. David laughed without meaning to. The artisanal blueberry muffin with crystal sugar topping and vanilla essence. Better. Emma turned to make the coffee. At least now you treated the muffin with the respect it deserves. While she worked, David watched her movements. There was something hypnotic about the way Emma moved through the small space behind the counter, efficient but relaxed. She greeted every customer by name, knew their preferences, and made jokes that brought out genuine smiles. Have you worked here long? David asked. Taking the steaming cup. Weekends for about 2 years. Emma leaned on the counter again. During the week, I work at an accounting firm. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. And here, she gestured around the cafe. It's kind of my therapy. I like people. Most of them, at least. David tasted the coffee and had to admit it was delicious, strong, full-bodied, with a flavor that really had personality. This is good, he said, genuinely surprised. Of course it is. I made it. Emma winked. You look shocked. What did you expect? Dirty water? No, it's just. David stopped, realizing anything he said would sound condescending. Oh, I get it, Emma said, shaking her head with an ironic smile. You're surprised that a regular person like me actually knows how to make real coffee, not just some cute waitress serving bad drinks with a fake smile. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is, but Emma didn't seem offended, just amused. Relax, David. I'm not fragile, and you're not the first rich guy to show up here thinking he found a hidden gem among regular folks. David felt like he'd been slapped in the face, a needed slap. You're right, he admitted. That's exactly what I thought. And it was dumb of me. Emma blinked, clearly not expecting such honesty. Okay, points for owning up instead of making excuses. They were silent for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was more like they were rethinking each other. So, why did you really come here? Emma finally asked. David hesitated. The truth was, he didn't have a rational answer. He'd spent 3 days trying to get Emma out of his head and failed miserably. He'd thought about how she made Liam laugh, how she didn't try to impress him, how she treated them both like normal people. I don't know, he said honestly. I guess I wanted to understand you better. Understand what? Emma tilted her head. I'm not that complicated. Work, pay bills, watch bad shows on Netflix, eat cold pizza for breakfast. Mystery solved. David smiled. Can I give you a ride home when your shift ends? I can take the subway. Thanks. I know you can. But can I still give you a ride? Emma studied him for a long moment. Why? Because I'd like to talk more with you. About what? About anything. About how you know so much physics. Why you work 2 jobs. Why you didn't try to impress me at dinner about everything. Emma bit her lower lip, thinking, my shift ends in an hour. I'll wait. You'll stay here drinking coffee and staring at me like a well-dressed stalker if you let me? Emma laughed. Okay, but you'll have to put up with me working. And fair warning, I'm way funnier with the other customers than with you. David settled at a small table in the corner and spent the next hour watching Emma at work. She hadn't lied. She was funny, warm, and natural with everyone. But David noticed something more. She really cared about people. She remembered names, asked about kids and pets, listened to work complaints with genuine patience. When her shift finally ended, Emma stepped out from behind the counter, taking off her apron. All right, Mr. Patience, let's go. In the car, a discreet BMW David had chosen instead of a limousine, Emma gave directions to a neighborhood David had never visited. Narrower streets, older buildings. Life happening on the sidewalks. Here, she said when they arrived in front of a 3-story apartment building. David looked up. The building was old but well kept. There were flower pots on the windowsills, clotheslines stretching between buildings, and sounds of life coming through open windows. Thanks for the ride, Emma said, already with her hand on the door handle. Emma, David called before she left. Yes? Can I see you again? Emma smiled, and this time there was no teasing. Just something soft and genuine. You know where to find me on weekends. She got out of the car and walked toward the building door. David watched her climb the steps and wave before disappearing inside. He stood there for a few minutes, looking at the building. Through the open windows, he could see small glimpses of life. A family having dinner. A woman watering plants. Children playing. It was simple, real, completely different from the glass and steel world David lived in. And for the first time in years, he wondered if maybe there was something valuable in that simplicity. David stared at the phone on his desk for 15 minutes before finally dialing the number. He had gotten Emma's number through the cafe, a casual conversation with the manager about a customer who left something behind on Saturday. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Hello, Emma. It's David. A pause. Then, in that playful tone he was starting to associate with her, David, billionaire CEO, is calling me. Wow, I must be in trouble. What's up? Did I forget to pay for the coffee? David chuckled without meaning to. Actually, I wanted to invite you. Liam has a science fair tomorrow night. We would like you to come. Liam specifically asked me to come. Well, David hesitated. He asked if you'd come. And when I said I wasn't sure, he said I should ask. Oh, I see. So it was Liam's idea. It was mine, too. David quickly added. I'd like you to come. There was a silence on the other end, and David wondered if he'd been too direct. What time? Emma finally asked. 7 o'clock. I can come pick you up. No need. I'll figure out how to get there. What's the address? David gave her the address of Brooklyn Academy, trying not to let relief show in his voice. Emma. Yes? Thank you for saying yes. Don't thank me yet. You don't know how I behave at school events. I could be a total mess. The next evening, the gym at Brooklyn Academy had been transformed into a science fair. Colorful projects filled tables arranged in neat rows, each accompanied by a proud and nervous child, ready to explain months of hard work. David arrived early with Liam, who carefully carried a box holding his project, a complex system of modified Rubik's cubes he had developed to create logical patterns. Is she really coming? Liam asked for the 3rd time as they set up their display. She said yes, David replied, checking his watch. Good. I want her to see what I made. David watched his son arrange every part of the project meticulously. Liam rarely showed any anxiety about impressing someone, but today was different. There was a hopeful energy in him. David recognized well the same energy he felt when Emma was around. At 7:15, David spotted Emma walking through the gym. She wore a navy skirt and a simple white blouse, but there was something about the way she moved, confident, curious, genuinely interested in what she saw that made her stand out. Emma! Liam waved enthusiastically. She approached with a bright smile and a paper bag in her hands. Liam, you look so sharp, she said, crouching down to his level. And this must be the mysterious project you've been working on. Liam practically beamed with pride. It's a combinational logic system using Rubik's cubes as the interface. Want to see how it works? I really do. David watched Emma lean over the project with genuine attention. Her questions were smart and specific. She truly understood what Liam had created. So, you developed a way to program patterns using color combinations? She asked, examining the modified cubes. Exactly. Each sequence represents a different command. It's like binary code, but with 6 variables instead of 2. Liam, that's brilliant, Emma said, and David could tell she wasn't just being polite. You created a completely new programming language. The event flowed naturally. Emma moved through the gym as if she belonged, chatting with other kids about baking soda volcanoes and solar system models. With the parents, she was just as comfortable, neither intimidated by the obvious money some had, nor trying to impress anyone. David watched her interact with Elizabeth Thornton, wife of a well-known senator, and noticed how Emma managed to be respectful without being submissive, interested without being fake. Your son is exceptional, Elizabeth told David as Emma stepped away to help a little girl with her project about carnivorous plants. And Emma is refreshing. David nodded, watching Emma turn a project about carnivorous plants into a hilarious presentation that drew both kids and adults. Plants are basically vegetable detectives, Emma explained with theatrical seriousness. They set traps, wait patiently, and then surprise dinner served. The little girl laughed. The adults smiled, and the project became one of the fair's most popular attractions. As the crowd began to thin, and Liam was busy explaining technical details to a group of impressed teachers, David and Emma found themselves relatively alone near the gym's bleachers. Liam is a total hit, Emma said, watching his animated gestures. He was born for this. He likes you, David said, and that isn't common. Emma turned to face him. Why do you talk like Liam is hard to like? He's an amazing kid who sees the world in a unique way. That should be celebrated. David hesitated. There was something about Emma's frankness that made him want to be equally honest. Most people don't get that. They think Liam is a challenge, or feel sorry for him, or think you're a hero for raising him alone. Emma finished with irony. How did you know? Because I've been on the other side of that equation. David frowned, confused. Emma was quiet for a moment, watching the soft gym lights reflect off the empty bleachers. I was an engineering student at MIT, she said finally, her voice softer than usual. Second year, full scholarship, top grades. I had a research internship in medical robotics and big plans to revolutionize prosthetics for kids. David stared at her, taking it all in. What happened? My mom got sick, early onset Alzheimer's. Emma gave a sad smile. My dad died when I was 16, so it was just the two of us. At first, it was little forgettings, teas, neighbors' names, but then she started getting lost, leaving the stove on, not recognizing me some mornings. David felt his heart tighten. I tried to balance school and caregiving, but Emma shook her head. She needed constant care, and I couldn't afford to pay for help. So I gave it all up. School, internship, boyfriend, dreams, everything. For how long? 4 years. Until she passed. Emma looked at her hands. When it ended, I was 26. No degree, no work experience, nothing. 4 years behind in a field that changes every 6 months. David looked at Emma like he was seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Not just the funny woman who teased him, but someone who had given up everything for family. You never thought about going back? Every day, Emma said, but going back meant starting over. And starting over meant not having money to live while studying. It's a dead end, Emma. David stepped closer without thinking. No. She cut him off, sensing the pity in his tone. I don't want your sympathy. I did what I had to do. You don't regret it. I just sometimes wonder who I'd be if I'd had a choice. David looked at her, seeing layers of strength and vulnerability he hadn't noticed before. You're extraordinary, he said, the words slipping out without thought. Emma looked surprised. I'm not. Yes, you are. You gave up your dreams for your mother. You see Liam for who he really is. You treat people like people, not like social status. You are. David leaned in to kiss her. Emma put her hand on his chest, stopping him gently. David, no. Why? Emma studied him with eyes that seemed to see through masks. Because you're used to people accepting whatever you offer, whenever and however you offer it." Her voice was kind but firm. "I'm not like that. If this is going to happen, it'll be when we both know exactly what we're doing." David stepped back, respecting her space. "You're right. I usually am," Emma said with a small smile. When they went to pick up Liam, they found him carefully putting away his project, a shining first-place medal around his neck. "Emma, I won." Liam ran to her, beaming. "Of course you did. You're a genius." In the parking lot, Liam came up to Emma, holding something. "I made this for you," he said, handing her a modified Rubik's Cube with a folded note taped to one side. Emma unfolded the note and read aloud, "You are different. That's good." She looked at Liam, her eyes shining. "Liam, this is the most special gift I've ever received." Liam smiled, one of those rare smiles that lit up his whole face. "When you solve it, you'll understand why you're important to us." Emma hugged Liam quickly, tucking the cube away like it was precious. David watched them, feeling something change deep inside. For the first time, he questioned if controlling everything was really as important as he thought. The Monday after the science fair, Emma was organizing returned books at the Boston Public Library when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the cooking section is?" Emma turned slowly, finding David standing between the shelves with an expression trying to look casual, but failing miserably. "Let me guess," she said, putting a hand on her hip. "You woke up today with an unexplained urge to learn how to cook, and by pure coincidence, you picked the exact library where I work during the week." David blushed slightly. "I really need to learn to cook. Liam is tired of takeout." Emma wasn't buying it. But there was something funny about his awkward attempt, and you couldn't just buy a cookbook at a bookstore because I wanted to see you. The honesty completely disarmed Emma. She expected him to make up more excuses, not admit it so directly. "Well, at least you're honest when cornered," she said, pointing in a direction. "The cooking section is over there. Beginner books are on the bottom shelf." David followed her, but instead of grabbing a book, he just watched Emma work. She organized, stamped, helped people find what they needed, all with a natural efficiency he found almost hypnotic. "Aren't you going to pick a book?" Emma asked without looking at him. "I'm weighing my options." "You're staring at me." "There's a difference." David chuckled softly. There was something freeing about being called out so bluntly by someone who wasn't afraid of him. On Wednesday, David showed up at the cafe during Emma's shift, using some excuse about being in the neighborhood for a meeting. "What meeting?" Emma asked, making his coffee before he even ordered. "An important meeting." "With who?" "With important people." Emma stopped stirring the coffee and looked at him. "David, you're a terrible liar." "I know," he admitted, accepting defeat. "I just wanted to see you again. You could have just said that instead of making up fake meetings. I'll say it next time." "There will be a next time?" David looked at her for a moment. "I hope so." On Friday, David showed up at the market where Emma was shopping. This time, he didn't even try to make up an excuse. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," Emma replied, trying to hide a smile. "Following my routine now?" "Maybe a little. That's kind of stalkerish, you know." "I know. Want me to stop?" Emma considered the question while picking tomatoes. "No," she said finally, "but next time, come before the veggies. I always spend more time picking fruit." Just then, Liam appeared from behind a cereal stack. "Emma!" He ran to her. "Dad said you were here." Emma looked at David, raising an eyebrow. "You brought backup." "Actually," Liam said, ignoring the tease, "I wanted to invite you. My class is having a school retreat this weekend. It's at Walden Lake, and parents can come too. Would you like to come with us?" Emma blinked, surprised. "Liam, that's very kind of you, but it's a family event." "Your family," Liam said with his usual straightforwardness. "Not official yet, but you are." David caught his breath. "Liam, it's true." The boy insisted. "You like her, she likes you, and she likes me. That's all the ingredients needed to make a real family." Emma looked between father and son, clearly touched by Liam's innocent logic. "Are you sure you want me there?" "I am," Liam said. "And Dad is too, even if he's too nervous to admit it." David sighed. "He's not wrong." Emma smiled, a different smile, softer and more vulnerable than any David had seen before. "All right, I'll go." Walden Lake, in the fall, was like a postcard. Trees dressed in red and gold reflected in the calm water, and the air had that fresh quality that makes people want to take deeper breaths. The retreat was held at an old wooden lodge with cabins spread around the property. The kids took part in activities during the day while the parents could relax or join optional workshops. David had booked 2 cabins, one for him and Liam, and another for Emma. But Liam, with his sharp logic, immediately questioned the plan. Why 2 cabins? Emma could stay with us. There are 2 bedrooms. Because David searched for a good explanation for a 9-year-old. It's polite. Polite to who? Liam asked. You slept on our couch when your sister visited last week. What's the difference? Emma laughed at the conversation, clearly enjoying David's discomfort. Liam has a point, she said, but I'm going to stay in my cabin anyway. I like having my own space. During the day, they joined the activities with the other families. Emma fit in naturally, helping with games, joining the trail hike, and making the kids laugh during lunch by the lake. David watched her interact with everyone, kids, parents, organizers, and noticed how she had a gift for making people feel comfortable. It wasn't forced or calculated. It was just who she was. At night, after Liam had fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's activities, David found Emma sitting alone by the campfire the organizers had lit in the center of the camp. Most of the other families had already gone to their cabins. Mind if I join you? He asked. Sure. David sat in one of the wooden chairs beside her. The fire crackled softly, sending occasional sparks into the starry sky. Thanks for coming, he said after a few minutes of comfortable silence. Thanks for inviting me. Well, for Liam inviting me, it was my idea too, David said quickly. I just didn't know how to ask. Emma turned to face him. Why is it so hard for you to say what you want? The question caught David off guard. He thought of several answers about responsibility. Being a CEO, taking care of Liam, but they all sounded like excuses because he paused, trying to find the right words because it's been a long time since I've wanted something that wasn't about work or taking care of Liam, and I don't know how to handle that. Handle what exactly? David looked at her. The firelight danced across her face, casting soft shadows that made her look even more beautiful. You, he finally said. I don't know how to deal with what I feel for you. Emma stayed quiet for a moment. And what do you feel? David opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. There was so much he wanted to say about how she made Liam smile, how she treated him like a regular person, how he thought of her every morning when he woke up, but the words got stuck in his throat. He tried again, but stopped. Emma watched him struggle for a few seconds, then stood up. David thought she was leaving, but instead, she came closer and knelt beside his chair. You think too much, she said softly, and then she kissed him. It wasn't a dramatic or passionate kiss like in the movies. It was calm, intentional, gentle, as if she were saying everything he couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, David looked at her with surprise and something like relief. I figured you needed a little push, Emma said with a small smile. David started to laugh, not a polite, controlled laugh, but something real and freeing, coming from a place he'd forgotten existed. How long have you been planning this? He asked. Since you showed up at the library pretending you wanted to learn how to cook. I do want to learn to cook. I know. That's one of the things I like about you. David smiled, feeling like a weight he'd carried for years had suddenly lifted. Emma, yeah? Thanks for the push. She kissed his forehead lightly, then sat back down in her chair. Anytime you need it. They stayed there until the fire burned down to embers, talking about everything and nothing, and David realized that, for the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about the future or worrying about the past. He was just present, right there with her, and that was more than enough. The Monday after their weekend at Lake Walden, David was determined to make Emma a more official part of his life. That kiss by the fire had shifted something deep between them, and he wanted her to see his world beyond casual meetings at coffee shops and libraries. The first step was a charity event at the Four Seasons. David had purchased a table for 10 and invited Emma to join him. It's a dinner to raise money for special education, he explained over the phone. I thought you'd like the cause. Emma hesitated. David, that kind of event, it's really not my scene. It'll be fun, he insisted. And you'll like the people. They're all involved in important causes. On Saturday night, when David arrived to pick her up, Emma was wearing a simple black dress she'd bought just for the occasion. She looked stunning, But David noticed something different about the way she moved. She seemed less relaxed, more self-conscious. "You look beautiful," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you, and thanks for lending me the shoes," she said, referring to the black pumps David had sent over with a note saying they were a gift, not a loan. The Four Seasons ballroom was exactly what Emma had feared. Grand, formal, and full of people who looked like they'd been born wearing tuxedos and evening gowns. Guests strolled around with champagne glasses, talking quietly about investments, summer homes in Martha's Vineyard, and even more exclusive social events. David greeted acquaintances, introducing Emma as a special friend. She smiled, shook hands, and tried to join the conversations. But David could sense her tension growing with each interaction. "Emma works at the public library," David would say, trying to include her. "How interesting," came the usual reply in that tone, that meant the opposite. It must be rewarding to work with books. The conversations followed predictable patterns. Working in libraries was considered noble, but soon the topic would shift to things Emma couldn't keep up with. Investment funds, internal corporate politics, gossip about people she didn't know. During dinner, Emma found herself seated between Patricia Langston, a senior partner at the law firm that represented Griffin Enterprises, and Michael Bennett, the owner of a luxury hotel chain. "So, Emma," Patricia said as she delicately cut her grilled salmon, "how did you and David meet?" "A blind date," Emma answered honestly, "set up by his sister." "How romantic," Patricia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And where do you work again?" "At the Boston Public Library, and I work at a cafe on weekends." "Two jobs," Michael commented. "That must be challenging." There was something in his tone that made Emma feel like a specimen under a microscope. She realized that people weren't really interested in her answers. They were categorizing her, judging her, figuring out where she belonged in their social hierarchy. David tried to include her, steering the conversation toward topics where Emma could contribute, but it was like trying to force a puzzle piece into the wrong place. It just didn't fit. "Emma knows a lot about engineering," David said at one point when the conversation turned to technology. "How interesting," said Patricia. "Did you study engineering?" "I started at MIT, but I didn't finish," Emma replied. "Oh." Patricia's interest vanished instantly. "I see." It was during dessert that Emma overheard the comment that changed everything. She had gotten up to go to the restroom and passed by the table where Patricia was speaking with two other women. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but David's name caught her attention. "David has always had a thing for charity projects," Patricia was saying. "First that school for special needs children. Now he shows up with a librarian. At least this time he's not mixing his personal life with philanthropy quite so obviously." "She seems sweet," said one of the other women. "Oh, I'm sure she is." Patricia's tone was condescending. "It's just that, well, David needs to think about what's best for Liam, too. That child needs stability, not social experiments." Emma felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Social experiment, charity project, the words echoed in her mind as she returned to the table. When David asked if she was okay, Emma mumbled something about a headache. When he offered to leave early, she shook her head and said he should stay. After all, it was important for him to be there. But when dessert was served, Emma stood up. "I need to go," she said quietly to David now. "But we haven't even I need to go," she said, picking up her purse. "You stay. This is important for you." David stood up, confused. "Emma, what happened?" "Nothing. I just need to go home." And she walked out, leaving David standing in the middle of the ballroom, not understanding what had just happened. In the days that followed, Emma didn't answer David's calls. When he stopped by the cafe on Saturday, the manager told him she had switched shifts. At the library, the front desk clerk said Emma was busy with a special project and couldn't take visitors. David felt lost. The lake retreat had been perfect, natural, spontaneous, real. But the moment he tried to include Emma in his official world, everything fell apart. Liam noticed right away that his father's mood had changed. "Where's Emma?" he asked on Wednesday during dinner. "She's busy," David said, stirring his food distractedly. "Did you guys fight?" "Not exactly." Liam gave him that sharp, observant look. "Did you do something stupid?" "Maybe," David admitted. "I don't know what I did, but apparently I did something." "Did you ask her?" She doesn't want to talk to me. Liam thought about that for a moment. Then maybe you need to try harder. On Thursday night, David was in the kitchen looking at a delivery menu when he had a sudden realization. Instead of ordering expensive sushi, he went out, bought a regular pizza from a local place, and drove to Emma's apartment. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs with the pizza box in hand, feeling more nervous than he ever had before any business meeting. He knocked on the door, footsteps on the other side. A pause. Then Emma's voice. "Who is it?" "It's me, David." Silence. Then the sound of the lock turning. Emma opened the door, wearing an old sweatshirt and pajama pants. Her hair was pulled up in a messy bun. She was barefoot and looked like she had been crying. Although David couldn't be sure. "Hi," he said. "Hi." They stood there, looking at each other for a moment. "Did you bring pizza or just yourself?" Emma finally asked. "Both," David replied. "But only one's worth it." Despite everything, Emma almost smiled. "Is it pepperoni? With stuffed crust?" Emma sighed and opened the door wider. "Come in, but only because I'm hungry and there's nothing to eat at home." David stepped into Emma's small apartment for the first time. It was exactly as he had imagined. Tiny but cozy, filled with books, plants, and items that clearly had stories and meaning behind them. "Emma," he said, setting the pizza down on the coffee table, "what did I do at dinner? I mean, what did I do wrong?" Emma sat on the couch, hugging her legs. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said, but her voice sounded tired. "That's the problem." David sat at the other end of the couch, keeping some distance. "I don't understand, Emma." Emma looked him straight in the eye. "I heard Patricia Langston call our relationship a charity project. She said you have a habit of, what was it? Social experiments." David felt anger rising in his chest. "She said that?" "She did. And you know what's worse?" Emma let out a humorless laugh. "For a second, I wondered if she was right. If I was just another one of your charity cases." "Emma, you know that's not true." "Do I?" she asked, staring at him. "Because from where I stand, it feels like you're trying to fit me into a world I don't belong in. And everyone in that world has made it pretty clear they agree with me." David moved a little closer on the couch. "I don't care what they think." "But you should," Emma said softly, "because that's your world, David. It's where you live, where you work, where you're raising Liam. And if I don't fit in there—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. David understood exactly what she was saying, and for the first time, he wondered if there was something deeply wrong with a world where someone like Emma wasn't welcome. David and Emma sat in silence on her couch for several minutes, the pizza growing cold on the table between them. The small apartment felt even smaller under the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. "Emma," David finally said, his voice lower than usual, "can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone." Emma watched him closely, noticing the change in his tone. There was a vulnerability there she had never seen before. "Of course." David leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees and looking down at his hands. "When Liam was 4, Laura, my wife, had a car accident." He paused, as if he needed to gather strength to go on. "She was coming back from the neurologist's office, where she took Liam for his therapy sessions." Emma said nothing. She just waited. It was a Tuesday in March. I was in a meeting, a big merger I'd been working on for months. David shook his head. "Laura called me that morning and said Liam had a panic attack at school, and she had to pick him up. She wanted me to come with her to the doctor's office." David stopped again, and Emma could see his hands trembling slightly. "I told her I couldn't, that the meeting was too important, that there was too much money on the line. I told her she could handle it on her own, like she always did." His voice became rougher. "Laura said Liam was asking for me, that he needed me there, and I told her Liam would be fine, that he wouldn't even notice I wasn't there." Emma felt her heart tighten, but stayed quiet. Laura hung up. "We didn't fight. She just hung up." David looked up at Emma. 3 hours later, I got a call from the hospital. Her car had skidded on a wet curve. The impact was instant. David. "But that's not all," he went on, like he needed to say everything at once, or he wouldn't be able to finish. "When I got to the hospital, Liam was still in the back seat. He was okay physically, but—" David swallowed hard. "He stayed in that car with Laura's body in the front seat for 6 hours. 6 hours until someone found them." Emma brought her hand to her mouth, horrified. "Liam didn't speak for 2 months after that. He wouldn't eat, barely slept, didn't respond to anything. The doctor said it was trauma. David looked straight at Emma, and I knew it was my fault. If I had gone with them, if I had been in the car, maybe... David, no. Emma interrupted gently. You can't know that, but I do, he said firmly, because Laura always drove slower when I was in the car. She said I made her nervous when she went too fast. If I had been there, she would have driven slower, would have stopped at the first sign of wet roads, would have... His voice broke. Emma moved a little closer on the couch but didn't touch him yet. What did Liam say when he started talking again? David gave a sad smile. The first thing he asked was, "Where's Mom?" And when I explained she was gone and wouldn't be coming back, he said, "Why didn't you go with her?" David closed his eyes. I didn't know what to say. And you've carried that guilt ever since. Every single day. David finally looked at Emma. I shut down after that. I stopped caring about anything that wasn't work, or Liam. I stopped trusting my judgment about relationships, about what really matters, because clearly I failed when it mattered the most. Emma stayed quiet for a long moment, taking it all in. That's why you're afraid, she said finally. It's not fear of loving again, it's fear of failing again. David nodded, and when I met you, he hesitated. For the first time in 5 years, I wanted something more than work and responsibility. I wanted you. I wanted you to be part of our lives. But you don't know how to do that without the risk of hurting the people you love. Exactly. David turned to face her completely, and tonight, when I saw how you felt at that dinner, how they made you feel, I realized maybe I'm already failing again. Maybe I'm trying to push you into a world that's just going to hurt you. Emma studied him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. David, listen to me. You don't need someone to fix this. She gestured vaguely, referring to the burden he carried. You don't need someone to make you forget Laura or erase your guilt. David frowned, confused. And what do I need? You need someone who's willing to stay while you learn to live with it. Emma moved closer and finally touched his hand. You need someone who understands that you're going to have bad days, but sometimes you'll make choices out of fear instead of reason. Someone who knows you're not perfect but sees that you're trying. David looked at her like he was seeing something impossible. And you? You'd be that person? Emma smiled. And for the first time since that disastrous dinner, it was a real smile. David, I gave up a career at MIT to care for my mother for 4 years. I know what it's like to carry weight. I know what it's like to make sacrifices others don't understand. She squeezed his hand. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here because, even with all your baggage, even with all your fears, you make me want to try. David felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd carried for so long, he'd forgotten what it was like to breathe without it. Emma, about that world full of Patricia Langstons. Emma shrugged. They can think whatever they want. I don't need their approval to know how I feel about you and Liam. David pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. I don't know how to do this right, he murmured. No one does, Emma answered, holding him back. We figure it out as we go. They stayed like that for several minutes, just holding on to each other. And for the first time in 5 years, David allowed himself to believe that maybe it was possible to love again without losing everything. What they didn't know was that Liam had gotten home 10 minutes earlier and was standing at the apartment door, listening through the thin wood. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but he'd come upstairs when he saw his dad's car parked in front of Emma's building. Liam quietly walked back down the steps and sat on the front stoop, trying to process what he'd just heard. For the first time, he understood why his dad always seemed to carry something heavy, why David sometimes looked at him with that sad expression he always pretended not to notice. But Liam had heard something else, too. Emma saying she would stay. Emma saying she didn't need anyone's approval to care about them. The next morning, David found Liam in the kitchen, hard at work on something at the island. Morning, champ. What are you working on? Liam looked up, and David noticed a look of determination in his eyes, something rare, even for Liam. I'm making something for you. David walked over and saw that Liam was modifying a Rubik's Cube, adding tiny dots of glow in the dark paint to the inner faces. It's special, Liam explained, continuing his careful work. When you solve it and open it, it'll glow in the dark, and there's something written inside. What does it say? Liam finished applying the paint and gently closed the cube. You have to solve it to find out. David took the cube. Noticing right away that Liam had adjusted the resistance of the pieces, it turned more smoothly, more easily. It took 15 minutes to solve, and when the last side clicked into place, the cube opened like a small box. Inside, written in small, careful letters that shimmered softly in the morning light, was Emma. David looked at Liam, who was watching him closely. "Liam, I heard you two talking yesterday," Liam said plainly. "I didn't mean to, but I did." David felt his stomach drop. "Son, about what you heard. It's not your fault." Liam cut in with the clear, direct logic that was so typical of him. "Mom died because of the rain and the curve, not because of you." David felt his eyes burn. "Liam, and Emma's different," Liam went on. "She doesn't pretend I'm normal, but she also doesn't pretend I'm broken. She just accepts me." Liam stepped closer and touched the cube in his dad's hand. "Don't lose her, Dad. People like Emma are rare." David looked down at the softly glowing cube in his hands, then at his son, so young yet so wise. "You're right," he finally said, "about everything." Liam smiled, one of those rare smiles that lit up his whole face. "I always am. It's statistically proven." And for the first time since Laura's death, David laughed at something from the past without feeling guilty. Maybe, finally, it was time to stop carrying all the weight alone. 2 weeks after that conversation in Emma's apartment, David did something he had never done in all his 42 years. He pushed a grocery cart. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Emma asked, watching David study a handwritten list like it was a complex financial report. "I have an MBA from Harvard," David said, frowning at Liam's handwriting. "I think I can figure out a shopping list." And what does that word say? The one you've been staring at for 5 minutes? David tilted the paper sideways. "Milk. Or maybe Luke. Liam's handwriting is a little—" Emma laughed and leaned in to look. "Definitely milk. And that down there says eggs, not UFOs." "I was going to say eggs." David lied shamelessly. They were at the Whole Foods in Cambridge on a Saturday morning, surrounded by families doing their weekly shopping, young couples picking out ingredients for romantic dinners, and retirees debating cereal brands. David felt completely out of his element, but in a strange way, it felt freeing. "Okay, next item," Emma said, picking up the list. "Ingredients for lasagna that isn't frozen." She looked at him. "Liam is very specific. He said he wanted to teach me how to cook something that doesn't come in a box ready for the microwave." Smart kid. They spent 40 minutes in the store, with Emma explaining the difference between ricotta and cottage cheese, helping David choose tomatoes that were just right, and teaching him how to check if eggs were cracked. "You've never done real grocery shopping before, have you?" Emma asked, while David examined a head of lettuce like it was a legal document. "I have a housekeeper who usually handles this," he admitted. "Or had. I let her go last week." Emma stopped walking. "You let your housekeeper go?" "Liam said he wanted to learn how to cook with me. And I thought, if we're going to be a real family, maybe it's time to start acting like one." The word family lingered in the air between them. It was the first time David had used it so directly, so intentionally. "David, I know it's too soon to talk about this," he said quickly, "but I want you to know that this isn't temporary for me." "You're not temporary." Emma smiled and lightly touched his arm. "It's not temporary for me either." The following Wednesday, David showed up at Liam's school for a parent-teacher meeting, something he usually delegated to his assistant or skipped entirely. The teacher, Mrs. Peterson, looked genuinely surprised to see him. "Mr. Griffin, what a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting." "Sorry I've missed the other meetings," David said. "I want to be more involved in Liam's education." During the meeting, David learned things about his son he hadn't known. Liam had started a tutoring program for younger kids struggling with math. He had written a short guide called How to Understand People Who Think Differently for his classmates. And he had asked to do a final project on non-traditional families. "Liam is a remarkable child," said Mrs. Peterson. "But may I ask, he's been mentioning someone named Emma a lot lately. He says she's teaching him about emotional behavior patterns." David smiled. "Emma is a very important person in our lives now. I'm glad to hear that. Liam seems more open lately, less anxious. It's obvious something positive is happening at home." On Saturday, David tried to make the promised lasagna. Emma had agreed to supervise the process, which basically meant she sat on the kitchen counter making light-hearted comments while David did all the work. "Okay, next step," David said, reading the recipe Liam had printed from the internet. Sauté the onion until translucent. What does that even mean? Onions don't turn into glass. It means soft and golden, Emma explained, swinging her legs from the counter. You'll know it when you see it. That's too vague for someone used to working with spreadsheets. Welcome to cooking, where not everything can be measured in percentages. Liam watched from a nearby stool, offering the occasional technical comment like, the pan should be at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're stirring at a suboptimal frequency. The lasagna came out slightly burnt around the edges, and the sauce was a little too salty, but when they sat down to eat, David felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride in something he had made with his own hands. It's good, Liam said diplomatically. It's great, Emma corrected, for a first try. You're both lying, David said. But he was smiling. We are, Emma admitted, but it's a kind lie. And the next one will be better. Next one? Of course, now you're a man who cooks. There's no going back. The following Thursday, David was at the office when Liam called with an unusual urgency in his voice. Dad, I need you to come home now. Liam, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm fine. You need to come and bring Emma. Tell her to come, too. Son, I have a meeting. Dad. Liam's voice grew more serious. How many meetings have you had in your life? How many surprises have I ever planned? David paused. Liam was right. In 9 years, the boy had never asked for something like this. You're right. I'm coming. David called Emma, who was working at the library. Liam wants us both to come home now. He says it's urgent. Is he all right? Seems like it. Just being mysterious. When they got to the apartment, they found Liam wearing an apron. Where had he even gotten an apron? And the dining table set with plates, glasses, and carefully folded napkins. Surprise, Liam said proudly. David looked around. The table was set for 3. There were candles, fake ones, for safety in the center, and soft instrumental music was playing in the background. Liam, this is amazing, but what's for dinner? Liam proudly pointed to the kitchen counter, where 3 frozen pizzas were just coming out of the oven. 3-flavor pizza, and I made dessert. The dessert was store-bought cookies, but Liam had arranged them nicely on a plate and written, "Welcome to the family," with frosting on paper napkins. Liam, Emma put her hand over her heart. You two always cook together, always do things together. I wanted to do something for you. Liam hesitated, and I wanted you to know I like the way our family is becoming. David felt a lump in his throat. Son, I know Mom's not here anymore. Liam continued with his usual honest tone. And I know Emma's not trying to replace her, but it's nice to have someone who gets our jokes and doesn't get awkward when I explain too much. Emma knelt down to be at Liam's eye level. Liam, thank you. This is the most special dinner I've ever had. They ate pizza and cookies, talked about Liam's science project, and laughed when Emma tried to teach David how to fold napkins properly. After dinner, they moved to the living room. David put on a movie. Liam had picked a science-themed comedy that was more educational than funny, but everyone pretended to love it. Emma, David said when Liam went to the bathroom, Would you like to stay the night? Emma looked at him. David, are you sure? I am. Not as a guest. As family. Emma smiled. Yes, I'd like to stay. When Liam came back, he found David and Emma sharing the couch with a clear space saved for him in the middle. Without hesitation, he nestled between them and pulled a blanket over all 3 of them. This movie is statistically inaccurate, Liam mumbled, snuggling against David. That's why it's fiction, Emma replied, gently brushing the boy's hair. Can I ask a question? Liam said sleepily. Of course. David said, Is Emma going to stay permanently now? David and Emma looked at each other over Liam's head. If she wants to, David said softly. I do, Emma answered. Liam let out a contented sigh. Well, I already figured out where we'll put her things in the closets, and it would be a waste of logistical planning if she left now. David and Emma chuckled quietly, and slowly the 3 of them fell asleep on the couch under the blanket, with the movie still playing on the TV. For the first time in 5 years, David fell asleep without checking emails or thinking about the next day's work. For the first time in her adult life, Emma fell asleep feeling completely at home, and Liam fell asleep knowing that his family was finally whole in a way that made sense to him. It wasn't the family he was born into, but it was the family they had chosen to build together. And that, Liam thought, just before falling completely asleep, was statistically much better. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Liam's surprise dinner. Emma was having coffee in David's apartment kitchen, something that had become a routine, when she saw her name on the thick envelope the doorman had left on the table. "MIT?" David asked, noticing the letterhead as he walked by to grab his briefcase. Emma opened the envelope with trembling fingers. She read in silence, her eyes moving across the lines with an expression that changed with each paragraph. "What is it?" Liam asked, finishing his cereal while reviewing a math project. Emma folded the letter slowly. "It's a job offer." David stopped looking for his car keys. "What kind of offer?" Biotech Solutions, a medical robotics company in San Francisco, is offering a re-entry program for engineers who left the field. Emma looked at the letter again, as if she couldn't believe what she was reading. "They offer 6 months of intensive training, a salary during the program, and then a permanent position developing prosthetics for children." The kitchen went silent. "San Francisco," David repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "It's exactly what I've always wanted to do," Emma said, almost in a whisper. "Medical robotics for kids. It's literally my dream." Liam stopped eating and looked between the two adults, his expression suddenly cautious. "Are you going to accept it?" David asked. Emma hesitated. "I don't know. I need to think about it." David nodded stiffly. "Of course, it's a big decision," but Emma could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided looking directly at her. "David, I need to get to the office," he said, grabbing his briefcase. "Liam, is Emma taking you to school today, Dad?" Liam started. "I'll see you tonight." David interrupted quickly, kissing Liam's forehead and walking out without looking at Emma. For the next 3 days, the letter stayed on the kitchen table like an unexploded bomb. David buried himself in work, leaving early and coming home late. Emma tried to talk to him several times, but he changed the subject or found excuses to leave the room. Liam watched it all with growing anxiety that started to show physically. He went back to spinning his Rubik's Cube obsessively and began listing prime numbers out loud whenever he got nervous. On Friday night, Emma finally confronted David when he came home at 10. "We need to talk," she said, blocking the kitchen entrance. "About what?" David asked, trying to walk past her. "About how you've been avoiding me for 3 days. "I'm not avoiding anyone. I've just been busy." "David." Emma crossed her arms. "We promised to be honest with each other." David stopped and finally looked at her. There was something wild in his eyes, something Emma recognized as barely hidden panic. "Fine. You want honesty?" he said. "I'm terrified. You've just been given the chance of your dreams, and I know I should be happy for you. But all I can think about is you leaving, Emma. And maybe that's for the best," he went on, the words pouring out. "Maybe we're just fooling ourselves. You've only just started changing your life, and I've only just started finding myself after being lost for so long. Maybe we're in too different of a place for this to work." Emma stared at him, shocked. "Do you really believe that?" "I don't know what I believe," David admitted. "I just know I can't go through this again. I can't let myself need someone and then lose them." "So, you're giving up?" Emma asked, her voice rising. "Before we even know if I need to leave, you're already giving up." "I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic." "No. You're being a coward." Liam appeared at the kitchen doorway in his pajamas, the Rubik's Cube spinning quickly in his hands. "Stop," he said, his voice tense. "Please stop yelling." David and Emma turned to him, instantly ashamed. "Liam, son." But Liam had started rocking slightly, a sign that his anxiety was climbing dangerously. "You're going to split up," he said, his voice getting higher. "Emma's going to leave, and you're going to be sad again, and everything will go back to how it was before. And Liam stopped talking but kept rocking. The cube was spinning so fast it was making a noise. "Liam," Emma said gently, moving closer. "Breathe with me, okay? Let's breathe together." But Liam was heading into a full-blown anxiety attack. David knelt beside him. "Son, it's okay. We're here." "It's not okay," Liam finally burst out. "You're fighting over a letter." "A letter? And now Emma's leaving because you're scared, and I'm going to lose her. And I'm going to lose you, too, because you're going to get sad and distant like you did when Mom died." Liam's words cut through the air like knives. David and Emma looked at each other over the boy's head, both seeing clearly how their fight was affecting the child they both loved. "Liam," Emma said softly, sitting on the floor next to him, "look at me. We're going to figure this out, okay? I'm not leaving without us talking everything through. You promise?" Liam asked, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promise." David helped Liam calm down, and after 20 minutes, the boy finally agreed to go to bed. Emma and David sat quietly in the hallway outside his room until they were sure he was asleep. "We need to talk," Emma whispered. They stepped out onto the apartment balcony where they could talk without waking Liam. "I messed everything up," David said right away. Liam was right. "I've been letting fear make all the decisions." Emma leaned on the railing, looking out at the city lights. "David, can I ask you something?" "Of course. If I ask you to stay, if I say I'm not going to take the offer, would I be holding you back from flying?" Emma turned to face him. "What? That's the question you should be asking me. If you're staying because of me, because of us, am I holding you back from flying?" Emma studied him for a long moment. "David, when I got that letter, the first thing I thought wasn't finally my big break. It was, how am I going to tell David and Liam?" She gave a small smile. 6 months ago, that offer would have been the answer to all my prayers. But now I have a family. I have you. I have Liam. I have a life we built together. Emma stepped closer to him. "If I stay, it's not because you asked me to. It's because I'm choosing to stay. Because this life we have is worth more than any dream job." David looked at her, barely able to believe what he was hearing. "But it's your chance." "David," Emma said, placing her hands on his face, "there are many ways to follow a dream. Maybe I can find a way to work with medical robotics here in Boston. Maybe I can go back to school and still keep the life we have. Maybe my dream has grown to include more than just a career. Emma, you gave me something I never had, a family that chooses me every day. And Liam gave me something I didn't even know. I needed a purpose that's bigger than professional success." She smiled. "I'm not giving that up for a chance that might come again. Maybe even better next time." David pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry for doubting us, for letting fear—" "Shh." Emma interrupted. "We don't have to be perfect. We just have to keep choosing each other." They kissed there on the balcony, with the lights of Boston stretching below them and the distant sounds of the city night around them. When they pulled apart, David smiled. "So, should we call San Francisco tomorrow?" "Let's do it," Emma said. "And then let's look into medical robotics programs in Boston together." "Together," David repeated, and for the first time in days, they both felt like they were exactly where they were meant to be. 3 months after the San Francisco offer crisis, life had found a new rhythm. Emma had enrolled in a graduate program in biomedical engineering at Northeastern University and gotten a part-time job at a research lab focused on pediatric prosthetics. David had learned how to cook at least 5 meals that didn't come out of a box. And Liam had created a new kitchen organization system based on optimized culinary efficiency. It was a Saturday morning when Liam walked into the room where David was reading reports and Emma was studying at a makeshift desk made of stacked books. "Dad," Liam said, carrying something carefully in his hands. "I'm done." David looked up from the papers. "Done with what, buddy?" Liam walked over, holding what looked like a Rubik's Cube, but different from any David had ever seen. Instead of the usual colors, each side had tiny hand-drawn illustrations, stars, hearts, gears, books, and little portraits that seemed to represent the 3 of them as a family. "It's a special cube," Liam explained, handing it to David. "There's no traditional solution to it, but it's the prettiest one I've ever made." David turned the cube in his hands, admiring the careful detail. Each drawing had been done with fine-tip pens, each part thoughtfully planned. "Liam, this is amazing. But how does it work if there's no real solution?" Liam smiled, one of those knowing smiles that meant he understood something. The adults didn't. "There is a solution. It's just not the one you're expecting." He pointed to a small, almost invisible arrow on one of the faces. "Follow the drawings in order. When you get to the end, you'll see." Emma walked over, just as curious. "Can I see it?" David showed her the cube, and together they started following the sequence Liam had created. Each turn revealed another part of a story Liam had told through the drawings. David alone with Liam, then Emma entering their lives, and then the 3 of them together, shopping, cooking, laughing. "Liam, this is like a picture book," Emma said, touched. "You drew our story." "It's not finished yet," Liam said, watching closely as David and Emma kept going. When they reached the final step in the sequence, something clicked. The cube opened up like a small box, revealing a velvet-lined compartment inside, and tucked in there, David stopped breathing. There was a ring, simple, elegant, with a small but perfect diamond, and beneath it, a folded note. "Liam," David started, his voice catching. "Read the note," Liam said, nearly bouncing with excitement. David unfolded the paper with trembling hands. Liam's careful handwriting read, "When you're ready to ask the right question to the right person with love, Liam, P.S. I already checked. She's going to say yes." Emma covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Liam, you. Dad's been talking about marriage for weeks," Liam said matter-of-factly. He always started the sentence, and then stopped. "I figured he needed help with logistics." He turned to David, "And I wanted you to know I officially approve." David looked back and forth between the ring and his son, feeling like his heart could burst from pride and love. "Son, this is... How did you even..." "I asked Aunt Rachel for help," Liam said. "She took me to a store, and I told the guy exactly what I needed. He said it was for a very special occasion, and I told him it was to make my family officially complete." David hugged Liam tightly. "You're amazing. You know that?" "Statistically, yes," Liam said with a grin. "So, are you going to propose, or do I need to make you a timeline?" Emma laughed through her tears. "I think your dad needs a minute to process." "Actually," David said, looking at the ring, then at Emma, "I think I've already processed." He turned to Liam. "Son, can you help me with something?" "Sure. I need to plan something special." "Would you wear that suit we got you for Cousin Michael's wedding?" Liam frowned. "Why? Are we going somewhere fancy?" "Something like that," David said, giving Emma a wink. "It's a surprise." The next Sunday, Emma received a handwritten invitation in Liam's handwriting to a special backyard picnic, blindfold required to preserve the surprise. When she arrived at David's apartment, Liam greeted her at the door, wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit and a tie he picked out himself, gray, with little Rubik's cubes printed on it. "You look very sharp," Emma said, straightening his tie. "It's a special occasion," Liam said solemnly. "Now, I need to put the blindfold on you." "Liam, what are you two planning?" "It's a surprise, but I can give you a hint. It's going to be statistically the best day of our family life." Emma let Liam tie a soft blindfold over her eyes and carefully guide her to the elevator, then through the lobby, and finally to the small backyard behind the building, a place she hadn't even known was there. "Can I take it off now?" she asked. "Wait," Liam said. "Dad, are you ready?" "I'm ready," came David's voice from somewhere ahead of her. "Now you can take it off." Emma took off the blindfold and blinked, letting her eyes adjust to the soft evening light. The backyard had been transformed. A checkered blanket was spread out on the grass. Picnic baskets were arranged around it. Small string lights hung from the nearby trees, and David was kneeling in the center of it all, holding the ring that Liam had hidden inside the Rubik's cube. "Emma," David said, his voice clear but full of emotion, "I've spent my whole life trying to control everything, trying to get everything just right. But you taught me that the best things in life happen when we stop trying to control everything and just start living." Emma brought her hands to her chest, tears already running down her face. "I want to overcook pasta with you," David continued. "I want to order the wrong meals at fancy restaurants. I want days that make no sense at all but still feel right because they're with you. I want to build a messy, perfect, completely ours kind of family." He held up the ring. "Emma, will you marry me? Will you marry us?" Emma looked at David, down on one knee in the grass, then over at Liam, who was practically bouncing with excitement, and then back at David. Instead of answering with words, she leaned down and kissed David a long, sweet kiss full of promise. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his lips, "Yes, let's solve this cube our own way." Liam let out a shout of joy that was probably heard 3 blocks away. "That means yes," he yelled. "I knew it. The odds were totally in our favor." David slipped the ring onto Emma's finger, and the 3 of them hugged right there on the grass, laughing and crying all at once. 6 months later, on a rainy Wednesday night, The three of them were sitting on the couch watching cartoons. Emma was wearing one of David's old t-shirts and mismatched socks. David was in sweatpants with tomato sauce stains on his shirt because they had tried and spectacularly failed to make homemade pizza. Liam was in his pajamas covered in little planets, nestled between them. On the TV, a silly cartoon about talking animals was playing, and Liam was seriously explaining why the physics in the episode made no sense. "Turtles can't run at 60 miles per hour, he said. "Seriously, it's biologically impossible. The structure of their shell wouldn't allow—" "Liam," Emma interrupted, laughing. "It's a cartoon. You can ease up on the science. But factual accuracy is still important, even in fiction." David watched them, his wife patiently explaining to their son why cartoons didn't have to follow the laws of physics, all three of them tucked under a blanket up to their noses, popcorn spilled on the couch, the apartment messy but full of life. It wasn't the life he had planned. It wasn't the perfect movie family dream. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. It was whole. And when Liam finally stopped analyzing turtle biomechanics and snuggled between them with a content sigh, David thought maybe this was the real definition of happiness, not perfect moments, but perfectly imperfect ones, shared with the right people. Emma reached over Liam's head and gently squeezed David's hand. 3 squeezes, the code they'd come up with for "I love you." David squeezed back. 3 squeezes. And Liam, without opening his eyes, murmured sleepily. Statistically speaking, it's impossible to hide signs of affection from someone who's physically between you. They chuckled softly, and outside, the rain kept falling, making the apartment feel even cozier. Simple, real, complete.